Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to our live session. Today's topic is IELTS Speaking. So, good afternoons coming in. Reba says hi, Ashwati says good afternoon. Nice to see all of you joining our live session. So, it's a very exciting topic that we have on discussion today, and that is answering a cue card. Rahana says good afternoon. Alright, so what is a cue card? Well, a cue card, very popularly called as let's say a prompt card, maybe a task card. Cue card is the most popular term. This is part 2 of IELTS Speaking, and that is exactly what we're going to have a look at today. The most recent exam questions that have happened. Now, so good afternoons. Yes, a lot of you. Hi, good afternoon all of you. Welcome Rahana, Akshaya, Arya, Gopika, Gokul, Ankita, Krishna. Wow, that's nice. So people are joining in a little slow. It's almost time for a good lunch to begin the rest of our day. And what more interesting than watching a live session full of tips for IELTS speaking while having your lunch. Yes, so Simi says hi, Shijin says hi, Sophia Linda D'Souza says good afternoon. So that's okay if you're having your lunch and you've already started having it. You can just keep our live session on and answer and participate, probably using your left hand. You just need to type out things whenever you're participating, because we need to have highly interactive sessions for our live classes. So this is going to be a very interesting one, because the topic today is IELTS speaking, and we're going to have a look at cue cards. Great. So Krishna, Aditya, hi, good afternoon. Well, people are joining in as like I said, it's already time for lunch, and probably some of you have headed off for lunch. Some of you have started your lunch. Nevertheless, let's take this as a starter, or maybe the main course for our lunch, and then have some tips and strategies as to how you can prepare for your IELTS speaking test. Well, yes. So, what is a cue card? That's our topic for today. Answering a cue card. Well, cue card is the second part of IELTS speaking, where you're given a task card or a cue card. You're given a question with 3 to 4 prompts, 3 to 4 subtopics, and the examiner also gives you around 1 minute's time to prepare on the card. So in a minute's time, you have to think of what will you add in your speaking. You might have interesting topics, like topics could be talk about a river that you've recently visited, or it could be talk about a person who has helped you, talk about your role model, or describe your first day at school, talk about a gift that you received from someone, describe a skill that you would like to acquire in the future. So there are a lot of interesting topics possible, and you are given a minute's time to prepare on the task. And what happens after this 1 minute's time? Well, you need to answer that card in around 1 to 2 minutes. So you're going to speak on the topic, whatever that interesting topic be. You have to speak at length for around 2 minutes. That is what is involved in our part 2 of speaking, which is very popularly called as the cue card section. Well, the terminology is individual long term, and that's how the IELTS sections of speaking are called, section 2 of, or part 2 of IELTS speaking. Well, so yes, a lot more have joined in. So Reshma, Anju, Shakira, Trinsha, Praveen, Sri Lakshmi S. Nair, Asha Thomas, Libin Antony, Adarsh Kumar, Tina Ipe. Well, interesting. So let's get started. I'm going to show you on screen our first cue card of the day, and our discussion will be based on this. So let's have a look at the most recent IELTS exam question that has come up in the speaking test in the cue card section. So on screen you already have the cue card. So what is the cue card? What does it say? Well, it says describe a time you had a cake. So you need to describe a time you had a cake. Wow. Look at the sub questions that you can see on screen. What cake was it? When did you have it? Who was with you? And what you felt about it? Well, interesting. So now when you're looking at the screen, okay, I want you guys to make a note of the card. This is one of the most recent IELTS exam questions. So please prepare on this. If you are a candidate preparing for the IELTS test, maybe you're doing a self-preparation or you're taking the help of a trainer, an institute, but make sure you prepare on this card. And the card is describe a time you had a cake. I know at this point you might be wondering, I've had lots of cakes in my life, because I know for every special occasion we do have, you know, a ritual. I could call it a ritual probably, or I can say we do have a custom of maybe cutting cake and distributing it to the guests who have come to share that occasion with us, or to share happiness with us. Especially when we have birthdays and celebrations related to birthdays, we definitely have a cake in store. So the cue card is describe a time you had a cake. Alright, so now I'm going to give you some time and I want you to come up with interesting responses. Now, the whole idea is to try and include all of these 4 questions into your answer. But at this point, let's take it one by one. The first question on the card is, what cake was it? Okay, so if the question is, what cake was it? What are the different possibilities? Can I have responses? So my question is very simple. You have to talk about, you have to describe the cake. What cake was it? So how are you going to describe a cake that you've had? What cake was it? Can you try giving me a sample response to that? What cake was it? How would you describe the cake you've had? Well, if I were to give a sample, I would say something like, I had a chocolate truffle cake recently. So chocolate truffle, maybe that's the flavor or the type of cake that I'm talking about. But what other words? This question is out to you. What other words can I use to describe the cake? Well, I can talk about the flavor. Chocolate truffle is a flavor. You can have vanilla. You can have probably something, you know, very popular cake flavors like black forest and white forest. So how else can I describe the type of cake that I eat? So I said chocolate truffle. Can you add something more to it? The first question is, what cake was it? So how are you going to describe that? Pooja Govindan says, good afternoon. Hi Pooja, hope you can listen to the question. Akshay is watching. Alright, so we have a comment that has come up on YouTube. Let me have a look at it. So our viewer on YouTube says Shabana Nazir. She says chocolate cake, and we have Namrata Binu again on YouTube saying it was a butter cake. So chocolate cake, butter cake, chocolate truffle, black forest. Can you add more words to describe the cake? Like how would you describe it in terms of size, in terms of the number of layers that you have? Maybe I can say it was a 3-tiered chocolate truffle cake. Or I can say it was a rainbow cake. So when I say rainbow cake, we expect at least 7 different layers, all in different flavors. So can you try describing the cake? So I have Shibi Shiju on Facebook responding as, it was a butterscotch cake. Nice. I want you to add a little more, maybe in 2 or 3 sentences if you can describe the kind of cake. What cake was it? So if I just say it was butterscotch, if I just say it was chocolate truffle, vanilla, it's just a flavor. Can you add more descriptive words to it? Like probably the size, how many layers, the color, the toppings, okay? And how fresh it was, how large it was. Alright, at this point I have another response on YouTube, and it's Anna Phillip. So hi Anna, I hope you're enjoying. And Anna's response is 2-tier wedding cake. Wow, okay. So Anna, can you add something more to it? 2-tier wedding cake. So probably you can add things about the flavor, the color, maybe the toppings it had. If it had any, let's say when it's a wedding cake, you might have small, let's say, what do you call it? These miniature stuff on the cake, like maybe a bride and a groom on the cake. Okay, a fondant art maybe. So can you add that? And I have another question on YouTube by Ahnaf2K3, and Ahnaf asks, hi ma'am, I'm 18 now. I wish to do IELTS. It's good or bad? Well, definitely Ahnaf, I would say this is the right time if you're planning to do your IELTS, because to take up the IELTS test, all you need to be is 16 years of age, and you say you're 18 years old. So if you're planning for maybe higher studies abroad, then IELTS is the best thing that can happen to you, and that's, I would say, the first step to take up your study program in a foreign country. So Hanaf, yes, this is the right time for you to prepare. Get started. You can join our regular courses or join our online courses. It completely depends on the kind of mode of delivery you're looking at. Alright, so I think Ahnaf has added saying yellow butterscotch cake is big more than a chocolate cake. So Ravi John on Facebook says icing. Okay, so we have Namrita Binu on YouTube saying it was a 3-tier black forest cake which is black in color. Okay, so yes, good response from Namrita Binu. Namrita, if you can add some more points. Now try to, build your response in 2 or 3 sentences. Okay, the question is, what was the cake? You have to describe the kind of cake you had. So we have our viewers adding in on flavors. And I want you to try and describe it in more detail, like add words related to the size, the color, the make, make as in, what kind of toppings were there any additional miniature pieces on the cake, or you can add things like who made it, like was it a fresh cream cake or a butter cake and things like that. So yes, so Kavita, great, you have given me a response on YouTube. And Kavita's answer is it was a chocolate cake with 3 layers, round in shape. Okay, so let's look at this response that Kavita has given us. It was a chocolate cake with 3 layers and round in shape. Now let me give you a tip here to Kavita and all others watching me live right now. Now this topic is you have to describe a cake you have had. Now remember, your description should be such that anyone listening to you describing the cake should actually feel like eating the cake right at that moment. So if you're going to entice somebody with the description, like imagine you want to try and convince someone to eat that cake, how much more descriptive would you be? So Kavita, your response, it says it was a chocolate cake with 3 layers and round in shape, which is okay. Now maybe you can add more interesting points to it. You said chocolate, so we expect it to be brown in color, and you can add further details saying maybe it had layers of pink flavored maybe cream on one side, Maybe you can speak about silver sprinklers on the cake. Okay, maybe it had fruit toppings, like you have berries and you have maybe nuts. With chocolate cake, I'm sure you have a lot of nuts as toppings. So you can speak about toppings. Okay, you can speak about, so when it comes to toppings, you can think of fruit toppings, nut toppings, or you might have a lot of these fancy stuff sprinkled on the cake. So if you can be a little more descriptive there, Kavita, you'll get a better score. Okay, in your IELTS speaking, it's all about being as descriptive as possible. So do we have responses on Facebook coming up? So I can see that our viewers on YouTube are quite active, and that is impressive. Now viewers on Facebook, let's not give up. It's a kind of competition now. I want you to try and come up with a response. You have to try and describe a cake that you have recently had. And what we're trying to do right now for all of you who've just joined in is try and be descriptive. Okay, so for example, I can say, I had a chocolate truffle cake which had fruit toppings on it. The cake had almost 3 layers, and each layer was of a different flavor. It was a fresh cream cake. Now when I say this, you can imagine, okay, now you're starting to imagine this, whatever I've described, you're trying to picturize this. Alright, so chocolate truffle, 3 layers. Now I said each layer was a different flavor. Now if I add on the colors as well, like I say, the bottommost layer was pink, the layer on top was yellow, and the topmost layer was completely chocolate. Okay, so now you can think of the different colors, the different flavors. I said it had fruit toppings. Now I can be more descriptive and say what kind of fruits. Like I can say it had fresh kiwis and cherries on top. So we know kiwi is green, cherry is red. So you can imagine all these wonderful colors on the cake. Or you can say it had silver sprinklers on top. Wow. So try and be descriptive. Okay, so let's have a look at the card once again for all of you who've just joined in. So this is the card that we're describing or we're talking about. This is one of the most recent IELTS exam questions. Okay, the question is, describe a time you had a cake. And we were trying to build on the first question, what cake was it? Alright, so we have a very interesting description on Facebook by Just Mary Sam. So let me read it out. So if Kiran, can we have the comment on screen by Just Mary Sam? Okay, it says, the cake looked very picturesque and it was butterscotch, which is my all-time favorite. It was decorated with beautiful pearls, rings, bells, and with a creamish layer on top. Wow, Jess, I'm sure everyone who's having lunch right now would just be wondering, can I have that piece of cake too? Okay, this is a comment that has come on Facebook and it is shared by Just Mary Sam. So Just Mary, that's a beautiful attempt at trying to pull out that first question. What cake was it? So for all of you who've just joined in, let me read it again. It says the cake looked very picturesque and it was butterscotch, which is my all-time favorite. So she's adding something additional. They're saying that's my favorite flavor. All decorated with beautiful pearls, rings, bells, and with a creamish layer. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So for such a response, I would say definitely you will get a good score, but we have to build the entire response. So at this point, just excellent response. I'm looking for your support throughout or your interaction throughout the session. Okay, so we have a response by Rasla, and she sent this response, I think, on Facebook, and it says, It was a red velvet cake. It was in the shape of love or maybe a heart. Good. Made for my mom's birthday. I made my mom's picture on that cake with the text, "Love you, Mama." Now that is excellent, Rasla. That's a good description. Now you can see samples that Rasla has put up or just Mary has put up, and in Rasla's sample there is more detailing. Like she says the shape, and she says for what it was made, like it was my mother's birthday. So try to connect it to the occasion then. What was the reason for the cake? It was in the shape of love. And what is the flavor? Red velvet. Excellent. And she also had her mom's picture on the cake. So being more descriptive. I'm sure at this point we are all able to picturize Rasla's cake. Well, that's how exactly you need to be descriptive. And she also adds saying along with the picture there was also a text. And what was the text? "Love you, Mama." Excellent detailing. You have to talk about all the small things that you can see on the cake or that was there on the cake. That's a good attempt, Rasla. Alright, so I have a response from... Okay, great. So on YouTube we have some very interesting descriptions that have come up. Anna Phillip has responded to my request and she's come up with a more detailed description. So what is Anna's description? It says, was vanilla flavored and had white and pink roses on one side with silver balls sprinkled on the other side. Wow. So Anna, I can actually visualize your cake, vanilla. So it's all white and I can see pink and white roses on one side. Okay. So maybe I choose the right side of the cake and say, okay, I can see pink and white roses there. And on the other side, silver balls sprinkled. So maybe sprinklers, that's what that's what you're trying to say. Good. Alright, so that's a good description. Okay, on YouTube again, like I said, we have real active viewers on YouTube who are making the session highly interactive. Thank you, 11th Mile Aim. Okay. Okay, so if 11th Mile says, I've been writing the exam but can't get desired score in reading. How can I get, ma'am? Okay, so 11th Mile, okay, that's how the name is on YouTube. 11th Mile, at this point, what I can tell you is, for reading, there are a set of question types that happen in the IELTS exam. So make sure you're very clear with the different questions. Like we have true-false question type, we have matching the headings, we have summary completion, table completion, multiple choice questions. So short answer questions. So there are certain question types. So this is my answer to 11th Mile's question. There are certain question types and you need to make sure that you know the strategy for each of it. So I would definitely suggest that you join a good training center. If you're quite far off from any of our branches where we have regular classes available, you can also have a look at our online courses, 11th Mile. Make sure you get all the strategy lessons for your IELTS reading and then practice. Practice ensuring accuracy, ensuring time management, and you should be good at it. I hope 11th Mile I've answered your question. For any other support, do get in touch with us. Okay, so I have another response from Ashwati M on YouTube. Ashwati, let me read out your sample response. It says, ma'am, is it necessary to include all the cues when I'm answering or can I provide my own answers? Okay, so this is Ashwati's questions. You have 4 sub-questions on the role play, on the cue card. You have 4 sub-questions. The first question that we saw was, what was the cake or what cake it was? The second question is, when did you have it? The third question is, who was with you? And fourth is, what you felt about it. So to talk about that moment of eating the cake as well. So Ashwati, your question is, should you be answering all the 4 questions? Well, my immediate response to your question would be, yes, you need to ensure that you're answering all the 4 questions because that is most ideal. Now, if you include all the 4 questions in your response, you can easily talk for the full 2 minutes. So, you can add additional answers. Like if you saw Rasla's example or just Mary's example, sample response, they added extra points. The question was, what cake was it? But there, if you remember me reading out Rasla's response, she had written things like the shape of the cake. She had written things like it was made for my mother for her birthday. So these are adding additional information, additional bits, like talking about the text being written as love you mama. These are all additional bits of information. So yes, you can add additional bits of things that are not given in the questions, but remember, Ashwati, it should be completely related to the topic. Now here the question is, describe a time you had a cake. So I cannot add anything like, I am planning on a diet. So, and then you talk about the kind of diet you're going to have. Is that related to the question? No. Or let's say the cue card is, describe a time you had a cake, and then you start talking about your cake making skills. Like you can say, there was this recent skill that I had learned, and it was making cakes. So I've learned how to bake cakes from a friend of mine, and I've actually tried baking different types of cakes. So you're thinking, I'm talking about cake. What is wrong? But no, that is considered as going off topic. Okay, so you have to answer the exact question given on the cue card, which is, describe a time you had a cake. You can add additional information related to the topic, but you cannot go off topic. So hope, Ashwati, on YouTube, I have answered your question. Alright, so here is Anna is taking it as a competition, and she's come up with an additional response. Okay, she says it was 2 tired round wedding cake which was vanilla flavored, had white and pink roses on one side with silver balls sprinkled on the other side. Excellent. Now she's learning how to pull out the description. So I would say good attempt, Anna. Okay, so we have a response from Ahnaf on YouTube, and he says, it was a pink strawberry cake I made for my brother's wedding anniversary with heart shape. Wish you first anniversary, my bro. Okay, that was probably the text. So Ahnaf, the text. So if you can add some more details. So Ahnaf, what I would say is a very good attempt, because you've given the color, the strawberry, the flavor, the occasion, anniversary for my brother's wedding, heart shape, and you said with the wish you first anniversary, my brother. So you can add additional bits of information, Ahnaf, here to make your response better. Like you can say it had beautiful text maybe written on top of the cake. Then you can say what was the text. Okay. Alright, so adding additional points there. Okay, so I have a challenge here, and the challenge is from September Man 001 on YouTube. Okay, so September Man 001 says, how can I answer if I have never had a cake? Now at this point, definitely this is something we need to discuss. I understand your pain, September Man, for never having had your cake in your entire life. But, okay, now let's analyze this. What if I have never had a cake and I get a card on my IELTS exam asking me to describe a time I have had a cake? Now, September Man, can I tell my examiner, sorry ma'am, I've never had a cake, so I will not be able to respond? Can I do it that way? What do you guys feel? Let me put it out as an open question. I'm looking for comments. I'm looking for help for September Man 001, and he has asked, how can I answer the question if I've never had a cake? Okay, can someone give you a response? How would you respond to this? Let's see what interesting responses people come up with on Facebook and YouTube. How can I answer the question if I've never had a cake? Can anyone give me suggestions that I can give September Man on YouTube? He's never had cake. Or let's assume that he's thinking of a situation where he's never had cake. So how do you answer that question? Let's see who comes up with the right tip, September man. Let's wait for a few seconds so that all of our viewers on YouTube and Facebook would come up with a solution. How can I answer something if I've never experienced it? This is part 2 of IELTS Speaking, which is popularly called as the cue card section. What do? I have never had a cake, but the question is, describe a time you had a cake. Well, Anna, if you're watching, Rasla, if you're watching, Just Mary, if you're watching, do let us know what suggestions I can give September Man 001. He's never had a cake. Now he was given the topic to speak about the cake. Ahnaf says not interested in baking. Okay. Let's see. Any solutions, anyone? Okay, no problem. I think we're all wonderstruck at this point thinking, what can we do? Alright, so we have a savior in the form of Just Mary Sam. So Just Mary's response is on Facebook, she says, no, we can't straight away say that. Let's just assume and imagine the cake and speak about it in simple words. So that is Just Mary's response. So she says, we cannot tell the examiner, sorry ma'am, I've never had a cake, so I'll not be able to answer this question. So Just Mary says, straight away we can't say that. We have to assume, imagine a cake and speak about it. Great. Rasla says on Facebook, I had a dream of making a cake. So maybe she's say connected to a dream. Akhil P. Joe says, use your imagination and creativity. Great tips coming up. September Man, I hope you're listening to us. You have tips coming up on how you can save your face if at all you get a card where you don't have an experience of what is given on the card as a topic. Like in this case, it is describe a time you had a cake, and imagine you're somebody who's never ever had a cake in his or her entire life. How would you tackle the situation? So Just Mary suggests that you can assume and imagine and talk about it. Akhil Pijo says use your imagination and creativity to answer it. Okay, great tips. Thank you Akhil and thank you Just Mary. So September Man, this is my response to you. We cannot tell the examiner that we've never had a cake. Now all you need to remember is IELTS Speaking is a test of your English proficiency, your English language skills. So you're just checking if you're able to speak well. So like Akhil and Just Mary and even Rasla had suggested, September Man, what you need to do is imagine of having eaten a cake. Create a story. You can fabricate. Okay, you can talk about somebody else's cake. I mean, maybe you've never had a cake, but you remember one of your friends have come and described about eating a cake. Use it as your story. Now I'm giving you the permission to lie. I'm telling you, go ahead, create a story, fabricate stuff. You can lie it out. That's perfectly okay. Because all that is being tested is how can you speak in English. So Just has another additional point that she has added saying don't lose the chance of not answering it. Yes, don't give up on the attempt. Imagine a cake. Now in this scenario we're talking about a cake. Bring in your own ideas and speak it off. Exactly, Just. So you need to think, you need to assume, you need to create and tell a story then. That's all. Because the examiner will never check whether you've really had a cake or not. The examiner is trying to see how would you deal with that situation. Can you communicate effectively? I think we have something coming up on YouTube. So let's see what our viewer on YouTube has says. So Anna Phillip says, Ahnaf said not interested in baking, but I guess you can say that you had assisted in baking with someone and share the experience. Okay, now remember, thank you Anna. Anna has tagged Ahnaf. Ahnaf said, why don't we say that I'm not interested in baking a cake? But remember, Ahnaf, the question is not about the question is not about have you baked a cake. It's about describe a time you had a cake. Had simply means a time you ate cake. Okay, you did taste it. So, like Anna says, or Jish, or even Akhil says, create a story. So, September man, that's my response to your question. Now, this is the question regarding a cake. Now, imagine any other cue card. Let's say a card that says, describe a time when you got in trouble at school. Describe a time when you got in trouble at school. Okay, now imagine I am a very, very good candidate. I was highly studious when I was in school. I was a very obedient student. I've never ever gotten into trouble. I'm that excellent a student. So I've never had a situation where I've gotten into trouble. But because the card says, describe a time where you got in trouble at school, I have to remember that, see, the examiner is testing my language skills and not my personality. They're not checking if I'm a good person or a bad person. They're checking if I can speak in English. So then I create a story. I imagine, maybe I think of a movie or a book I've read recently where something like this happened, and I create it as my own story. I've never ever been punished in school, but I say, oh, there was a time I remember when I was in my 12th standard, I was punished in front of the whole school because, and start creating a story. So I'm going to say something I messed up, something that went wrong, and then I was punished. So that was the time when I got into trouble. But I'm creating a story here. It's not because I was really punished or things really happened, but I understand that in speaking, the examiner is checking how good my language skill is. Well, at this point I have a response from Akhil P. Jose, and he says, IELTS exam is not about checking facts, but it's about your competency in English. Akhil, I really like that usage of yours, competency in English. You have to answer whatever question the examiner asks. Excellent. Akhil, I'm sure if you're a candidate looking for preparing for the IELTS, you have a very good chance to get a very good score when it comes to IELTS speaking. So good luck, Akhil, with your preparations. Well, yes, so that's the answer to your question that was asked. You need to work on it. You need to respond. Okay, it really doesn't matter whether you've had the experience or not. Now, I think I have another question from on YouTube, and the question is from Ahnaf, and he says, ma'am, can you please explain about what are the basic skills I need to do in the IELTS? Well, Ahnaf, the IELTS is an English language exam that tests your language competency or language proficiency across the 4 skills. You have listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So as an IELTS aspirant, as an IELTS candidate, you have to ensure that you're working on all the 4 skills equally. Like, you might be somebody who's very good at speaking, but you cannot write well. That just cannot do, because you need to make sure you're good at writing and speaking, and at the same time you're also able to do well in your listening and reading tests as well. So you need a mix of all of these 4 skills to be able to appear for the test. Okay, so I have another comment on YouTube, and it's from Army Life BTS, and the comment says, okay, it's a description of the cake. It was blue color cake which is round in shape and silver sprinklers sprinkled on top. It was made for my sister's birthday. The cake looks quite delicious, and there's a text that says, happy birthday. Army Life, good attempt. Can I give you some suggestions here? Now, if you can have Army Life's, I think, question on, response on screen, and it says it was blue color cake which is round in shape. Now we need to be very careful with the usage of tenses. Now the cue card says, describe a time you had a cake. So we're talking about past. Whenever we describe the past, it's best to use the simple past tense. Okay? So instead of saying it was blue is correct. Was is the past tense. So Army Life, you use that right, saying it was blue color which is round in shape. is a present tense. So you need to ensure that your complete description of the cake is in the past. So you say, it was a blue color cake which was round in shape with silver sprinklers on top. Now again it says it's made. It is made for my sister. Is in the present. So you say, it was for my sister. Everything in the past. Because here you're describing a cake you already have had in the past. Right? And you said the cake looks quite delicious. So you say the cake looked delicious. The cake was delicious. It was really good. Okay? And there was a text that said happy birthday written right on top of the cake, which was spread across the cake. You can also say with what color it was written as, happy birthday. Okay? So these are my suggestions. My comments, ways to improve army life. A very decent, a very good trial, but just be careful with tenses. So remember friends, remember anyone, aspirants out there preparing for the IELTS, it's important to make sure your tenses are in the right form. So understand whether you're talking about the past, whether you have to speak about the future. Are you going to speak about the present, which is the condition right now? Accordingly, you'll have to use the tense form. So keep in mind, especially in part 2 of speaking, the usage of the right tense form is immensely important. Okay? Well, let's have a look at the card once again. Describe a time you had a cake. Now, you will not have a picture like this, though I've given this picture on screen so that you can try and, tingle your imaginations, kindle your creativity and start coming up with responses. Describe a time you had a cake. So, you will not have an image like this, but this is a very good tip that you can take away today from our live session. So, imagine the picture, visualize it. As you visualize the cake, things start coming in place, it will fall in place and you'll be able to describe it better. Now the second question that you can see on screen is, when did you have it and who was with you? So now I want you guys to try and attempt that. You have to answer, when did you have it and who was with you? Try giving a response here. Can you try building a sample response to that? When did you have it and who was with you? Okay, looking for sample responses, viewers on YouTube and Facebook, please try and type out a response to that. When did you have it and who was with you? Try answering in 4 or 5 sentences this time. Okay, on Facebook, I think we have a comment or a question, and Akhil has put up this question, Akhil P. Jose, and he says, some trainers say we should use all the 3 tenses when we answer the cue card. Is it necessary? Okay, that's an interesting question. That is something that not all of us or many of us would have thought about much. But Akhil, your question is definitely reasonable and it is, I would say, brilliant on dot, because this is something that I'm sure many students would have in mind as well. So Akhil's question is this: some trainers say we should use all the 3 tenses when we answer the cue card. Now I would say, let's first understand why a trainer would have said that. Why should you be using all the 3 tense forms? Now the main idea is you're trying to use every opportunity that you have in the IELTS speaking test. Now opportunity in the speaking test simply means every question that is asked to you. Use every question as an opportunity to flaunt your language skills, to show off your language skills. Now I have just 14 minutes time to try and convince the examiner, and in these 14 minutes, if I don't really perform well, if I really don't show how flexible I am when it comes to using English, my chances of getting an 8 or a full 9 band in speaking is less. So I have to use every opportunity to flaunt these skills of mine. That is why some trainers would say in a cue card, try and use all the tense forms, because there you're showing variety. You're showing a range of language skills. You're trying to tell the examiner, see, the card is in the past tense, which I know, but I can also in the same card try and use the different tense forms. So I'm going to try and tell the examiner, hey examiner, Please make a note of my usages. I have to use the past tense, but here I've managed to speak wonderfully well using all the tense forms. Aren't I very good at English? This is the kind of, this is the kind of cue you're giving the examiner. So at this point, if the card is about describe a time you had a cake, which is in the past, okay, you can also speak about it like saying, I have always wanted to have a rainbow cake. Now this is something that I want because I'm looking at the future, right? This was my dream. I have always wanted. And I'll say, so, or maybe what I can do is, well, the cake I had was a chocolate truffle, but I wish, or the next time I have a cake, I will make sure that I add something more to it. So here I'm using the future, okay? Or I can use the present. I can say, this is something, this is a cake that I order every time I have an occasion. Or even today, it's my sister's, or I can say it's one of my friend's birthday, and I am planning to order the same cake. So I can try and use the different tense forms just to flaunt my language skills. But it is not mandatory. But if you can, always good. Always good, because you're trying to tell the examiner, see, I'm very flexible when it comes to using English. Well, Tinso, I'm very sorry Tinso, let me try and read your name. On Facebook, Tinso Paratana, sorry, I'm really sorry. I think it's your family name, but I'm not sure if I'll get it right. So I'll just call you as Tinso. Sorry Tinso on Facebook. He's added saying, I bought a cake from Buns and Beans, a shop in my hometown. It was delicious for my girlfriend's birthday. Oh, that's nice. It was delicious. So he's added details about the shop that he bought it from, the occasion. He said definitely is his girlfriend's birthday. Yes. So Tinso, can you try and answer the other questions for me? Like, when did you have it and who was with you? So you said it was for your girlfriend's birthday, but you didn't really add if, it was only your girlfriend present with you, or you had other friends and family with you. So if you can add a little more detailing about it. When did you have it and who was with you? So I would say Tinso has made a brilliant, I would say construction there, where he added an additional detail about where he bought it from, the shop. He said, I bought a cake from Buns and Beans, and then he described it saying, a shop in my hometown. That's an excellent way to describe, to add additional words and try and pull out your response. I'm sure, Tinso, this is a very good strategy that not only Tinso, anyone else can use. Now, when I say I bought it from Buns and Beans, you cannot expect the examiner to know where Buns and Beans is. So that is why he's added the description saying, a shop in my hometown. I can say it is one of the most popular cake shops in my hometown. Right? So I'm describing that place. I'm adding additional details there. So Tinso, good job. I would say excellent. Remember, this is a tip for your IELTS speaking exam. Be descriptive about everything. Add anything additional. Okay? Like somebody had said, I had bought a butterscotch flavor because it is my all-time favorite. That is adding an additional description there. Okay, so again we have an active Just Mary giving me a response. Thank you so much. And she says, I had it on my graduation day. So she's trying and expanding. When did you have it and who was with you? Okay, great. So she's tried and answered it in 4 or 5 sentences, and she says, I had it on my graduation day in the year 2019, August. It was an astonishing moment when we were all surrounded with beautiful cake, and I had my bosom friends, staff, chief guests on that particular day. It was a jubilant time. So just, okay, at this point, I would definitely commend saying that your attempt is good. So what you have to focus on, just, these are certain suggestions I have for you. See, here I feel certain words are used to try and convey to the examiner that I know these words. For instance, bosom friends, I would say not really required. You can just say, I had my classmates, of course, or my best friends. And it was a jubilant time, maybe something more descriptive there. Okay, so add on to it, jubilant, why? Why was it jubilant? You can say because it was one of my dreams come true. It was my dream course and I had just completed it. And who else to celebrate it with? So be a little more descriptive there. Otherwise, it looks like you've used the word jubilant and you're trying to yeah, you can see it on screen, just as a response, but I would say a good attempt. And just as added saying, even though it was quite a Herculean task to finish the cake, as it was a very big one. Okay, so here she's trying to show these usages. Herculean task. Herculean task means something really big, something that is difficult to achieve. It's as huge as a mountain probably. So good attempt, just Mary. These are good, I would say, fine examples of how you can incorporate idiomatic language and phrases into your conversation, into your speaking. So you're trying to show the examiner, hey, see, this is how I can use stuff. I'm really good at it, right? So I would say these are excellent attempts, and this is definitely a tip that you can take away from our live session. One is be descriptive and keep adding additional descriptions to it. You can add additional points to it. Like we had, so just say, sure ma'am, we'll concentrate on it, thank you. Or like Tinso's example where he said, the cake was bought from Buns and Beans, which is a shop in my hometown. Or I ordered a butterscotch flavor, which is my all-time favorite. Or adding additional information like I baked it on my own, or it was on this particular occasion, and you probably even the price. You can add like how much did it cost. Okay, you can add things like how easy was it to get the cake. So you can add additional bits of information, and it's good to try and use new words, but remember, it shouldn't look like these words are standing out there. It shouldn't look like you're using it just because you have to use difficult words. It should fit the context. Okay. Alright, so at this point, I would definitely say, I will show you a beautiful app that you can use. It's called the MedCity IELTS app. And this app is loaded with video lessons. It has free practice materials and lots of tips and strategy video lessons. It will help you prepare for the IELTS test completely on your own, and at your own convenience from anywhere around the world. You can learn using MedCity IELTS app. If you're looking for practice with speaking, this app comes with excellent speaking videos with feedback. So you can see candidates perform on the different questions in the IELTS speaking. You can also see a detailed feedback on their performance. You also have lots and lots of sample speaking questions for you to practice with your friends. And of course, for all the other modules, you have sample answers, practice materials, question bank, and lots more. Download the app to have to enjoy your preparations for the IELTS. It's available on Android and iOS. So definitely check out our MedCity IELTS app. Alright, at this point I would also like to show you another interesting bit of practice material that we have. It's called as the Ielts Maestro. I'm not sure how many of you have heard it, but it's a huge hit. It's indeed a huge hit when it comes to being a practice material for our students. So this is a material that we use across all our branches, and our students find it really helpful. So if you're a candidate preparing for the IELTS, and the Ielts Maestro is the best bet you can have. It has all the 4 modules covered in detail, strategy lessons, tips, tricks, sample answers. Even if you're looking for writing, you have lots of sample essays, sample reports, sample letter writing, and speaking sample answers with a huge list of question bank for speaking. You also have tips and strategies on how to solve each part of your IELTS speaking test. Yes, you're listening and reading as well. So definitely a good buy, the Ielts Maestro. It's available on our website for purchase. So all you need to do is click on www.medcityinternationalacademy.com. You can purchase it from our website. You can buy it directly from any of our 16 branches. And Ielts Maestro is available on both Flipkart and Amazon. It's a second edition that's doing the rounds now. So imagine the first edition is always all sold out. That huge a hit is this book. That's why we've come up with this new second edition of Ielts Maestro. Buy it right away so that you can prepare completely on your own and ace your IELTS test in the first attempt itself. Good luck with your preparations there. Alright, so that was certain tips that we have, or resource materials, resources that you can use in your IELTS preparation. So hope our Medcity IELTS app and the IELTS Maestro will completely assist you in your journey to clear your IELTS test. Well, so these are the round of tips that I would like to give you before we wind up the session today. So I think I've already answered Akhil's question. Oh, okay, we have another question from Jibin Joseph. Okay, Jibin Joseph says, how do I make sure that we have answered all the sub-questions properly? Okay, Jibin, okay, that's interesting. Now, how do you make sure? You have 4 questions, Jibin, and if you need to ensure that you need to answer all of them properly, try to answer them in the order. That's the most ideal order, but there is no rule that you have to follow the same order. You can change it also. Like I can begin with what I felt about eating the cake first and then talk about what was the cake and why and when I had it. So you can jumble the order, but it should be logical, it should be sequential, and try and give half a minute per question. That's an ideal method that you can use. If you give half a minute for question 1, half a minute for question 2, half a minute for question 3, and half a minute for sub-point 4, you can easily ensure that you're paying equal attention to all the 4 sub-points. And you can also ensure that you're including them in your response. So Jibin, that would be my tip. If you can give half a minute. Half a minute would be somewhere close to 5 to 6 sentences maybe. So what was the cake? Describe it in 5 to 6 long sentences. Then go to the next question. Again, another 5 to 6 or 8 sentences. So similarly, you give half a minute for each of the sub-point, and that will help you easily speak for the complete 2 minutes. I can also see another question by Akhil Jose again on Facebook. So Akhil's question is, trainers say that don't deviate from the topic when answering the cue card, but where should we draw the line? How can we make sure we don't deviate from the topic? That is quite tricky, Akhil, because it is from one question to the other. Now, let me say, if you are somebody who is very good with the usage of English, you can easily even trick the examiner. You can speak about something that is not completely to the card, maybe because if you don't have an experience related to it. Like for instance, let's say it says, talk about a book that you have read recently. Or talk about a book that you have read, not even recently. Talk about a book that you have read, which is about health. Okay? So now you have the sub-questions, and imagine you've never read a book about health and you can't create something. So there's a nice way of speaking about it in 2 minutes time. What I can say, well, I don't really read books a lot, but I listen to these audiobooks. Okay, so here I'm not talking about reading, but I'm talking about listening to audiobooks. Or I can say, I really don't read books a lot, but I've seen a movie recently which had these beautiful subtitles, and it was a documentary and it was about this particular health condition. And probably you can start talking about it. So again, you've cleared it, saying it's because you haven't read a book that you're talking about a documentary you've seen about health. So you're connecting it there and then you're describing it as much as possible, which should be okay. Again, like I said, it completely depends on how you tackle it. But answering Akhil's question, where do you draw the line? Now it's quite challenging to draw the line because you have to identify where you're going off topic. So one good way to make sure you're on track is to follow the questions. So make sure you give half a minute per question, and of course you need to add additional information there, but if you don't talk too much about one sub question, maybe you will not deviate from the topic, because you've described what the cake was in half a minute. Now you have to move on to the next question, because if you don't remember that I have to move on to the next sub point, I might talk a lot more about it, and I might say, okay, this is something I really wanted to try baking. Maybe the next time I'll not buy a cake, but I'll look up for the recipe and bake a cake completely on my own, and I start talking about baking skills. So I've gone off topic. So if I make it a point that I speak only half a minute per sub point, I'm keeping myself on track, saying, see, look, you have to focus. You have to answer the next question. You've done enough on the first question. Now move on to the second question. That's enough for the second question. Now move on to the third question. So it's a way for me to keep track of how I'm speaking. So definitely I'll say, Akhil, that's a method you can use to ensure that you do not deviate and you're on track all the time. Well, I think we are almost towards the end of our session. It was indeed a wonderful 1 hour interactive session beautiful responses on YouTube and Facebook. This is one recent IELTS examination question. Cue card, describe a time you had a cake. So guys, make sure that you prepare on this cue card and use all the tips that we've discussed in the session, 1 hour sessions that we've had, and brilliant samples. So you can look up for these samples. Even once our live is, it's done, we still put it up on our Facebook and YouTube channels. So you can watch our live session again, the recorded one again, and ensure that you look up for the good samples. I've given comments on the certain samples, so that will also help you in your preparation. Thank you so much for joining us in our live session today. I really enjoyed the session. I hope you had a wonderful lunch as well as wonderful takeaway for IELTS speaking preparation. Thank you and good luck.